I'm clicking record. Welcome to the February 8th edition of the SIG CLI biweekly meeting. I'm Sean Sullivan, I'm your host. We'll get directly into our announcements. We have the enhancements freeze tomorrow, and there's at least one of our KEPs is, I think, in pretty good shape, and I'll leave that up to Justin or to Katrina to discuss that when we get to sub-project and KEP updates. But I hope you've been working hard on your enhancements since the freeze is tomorrow. And then about 4 weeks later, maybe a little bit more than that, is when we have our code freeze for the 127 release, and we're scheduled for a release on April 11th for 127. So does anybody else have any other announcements they would like to make? Okay, so there's a part of our meeting we'd like to introduce newer members, those that haven't been here in a very long time, or those who are brand new. This is an opportunity for the SIG to meet you and you to meet the SIG. So if there's anybody who'd like to take this opportunity, please go ahead. I think I recognize just about all the names, so I don't think that we have too many here that are brand new. Why don't we move on to the next item then, which is the sub-project and KEP updates. So would anyone like to, I'll bring up the prune apply set KEP. Is that visible now?
Yes, it is.
Yep. Okay, great. Would anyone like to discuss the status of that? Katrina or Justin?
Sure. Just like it looks like it's going to be good to go for tomorrow. So we're super excited to start actually working on it. We kind of paired on it a little bit last week, but we're going to be writing the feature in earnest because it looks like it's going to go in.
Excellent. Okay, so we have also, Katrina, would you like to talk about Kustomize, or anyone else? An update?
Oh, yeah. I should have said, like Justin said in the chat, thank you to everyone for the excellent comments and feedback. We received quite a lot on that KEP, and that was really awesome. Yes, about Kustomize though, we finally managed to get through the version 5 release with all the features that we wanted to get in there pretty much last week. So I believe I put the link. Yeah, there we go. We tried to do very extensive and detailed release notes to help folks out this time. So if you're interested in Kustomize, please have a look at this release, give it a try. We were really proud of all the work that went into this, both from the core team and all of our contributors.
Wow,
thank you to everyone who participated.
That's really big. I've seen in Slack a few people actually sounding very excited for this next version.
Yeah, we have some really great stuff in there. There's performance improvements. There's a major new localized feature. Thank you to Anna for all of her hard work on that over the past months. There's new Helm fields that we added by popular support, and then tons of bug fixes for various areas of Kustomize. Yeah, and we are intending to propose this for kubectl in before code freeze as well. As usual, we bump it in kubectl after a period. And for this one, we're going to wait a few weeks before we propose that bump to see if there's more bug reports that come in. Because if there are, then we would probably do a 5.0.1 release with any fixes before actually pushing it up to kubectl before the freeze. So we're waiting a little bit to do that, but we do intend to get version 5 into kubectl 127.
Excellent. And So is it okay if I move on to CUI?
Yes, please.
Nick, would you like to talk about CUI 13.1?
Sure. In the release notes, you can see some screenshots, some bug fixes. We had some reports of not displaying well on phones. Those are fixed. Some more load time improvements. I think we're down to about 500 milliseconds for load time. Pretty happy with that. And then in terms of features, finally Helm status, and there's a container tab for pods. So that's about it.
Great, thank you very much for that. And the customize function catalog, let me move to that particular link.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that I'm getting started working on this. So if people have opinions, let me know. There is a PR open updating the KEP itself, but probably don't look at it yet. Wait till Katrina does and then look at it. So some stuff will be out of the way. But if you have ideas or anything, please let me know because I will start digging into this soon.
Okay, great.
Thanks, Kaylin. That's a super exciting feature for Customize. So I'm really, really happy to see it moving forward.
Excellent. Is there any other sub-project or KEP updates we would like to address? If not, we can move on to the open discussion. Okay, so the it doesn't look like looks like we have about 3 items here. The first item is one I put on. There's a recently resurrected issue that's been around for a long time and is starting to get more traction, which is WebSocket support for kubectl exec and attach, and also port forward. So I'll give it just a little bit of background on what this is. There's nothing that the SIG needs to do, but I'd like to raise its visibility because I think that there's going to be some work in this area. So there's a couple kube control commands that would significantly benefit from full duplex communication over a single TCP socket. And those are the 3 kubectl commands that I just described. And so initially, the way that this protocol was implemented for these commands was Speedy. And Speedy was a Google proprietary protocol that eventually became HTTP 2.0. And there's some slight differences between those two. But because of that, Speedy has been deprecated. It's been deprecated for probably 8 years when HTTP 2.0 was ratified by the IETF back, I think, in 2015. And so there's been many different complaints about exec not working in certain situations. Or not just exec, but these 3 kube control commands because of Speedy and because of the deprecation and because this particular protocol has been deprecated for so long. So the API server already supports WebSockets, and this is another protocol which implements this full duplex communication over a single socket. And so there is an effort to get these commands to understand or to speak this WebSockets. I think eventually we want to get to HTTP 2.0, but to be honest, I don't think that that's supported in the API server, but we do know that the API server supports WebSockets now. Although Daniel Smith was saying that, there may be some bugs, and we probably want to test that out. In order to get a quick win, I'm pretty sure that we're going to be implementing WebSockets in these commands. And the way that this works is you send an HTTP request, and one of the headers is an upgrade saying I want to upgrade to WebSockets. So I just wanted to raise that visibility to everybody that anybody. I think actually. A couple of us, myself included, might already have been given there may be some consensus that some of my time could be worked on this, and so I might, and there may be others as well. But whoever would like to be involved in this, please let me know.
I remember there were some earlier approaches at WebSockets. I can't remember what happened with those PRs, but over the past years, I do remember a couple, but I'm guessing that they didn't went through the reviews or
Right.
I guess.
So if you look at this issue, it started about 3 years ago. DIM started it, and it's actually quite involved. And so it goes back and forth with a bunch of people. And there was actually one person, Mark Borstein, who I think got most of the way there, and it kind of just fell apart. It looks like. And it started, the issue itself started becoming stale and rotten. It's been frozen by Daniel Smith just this last week. But if you have a look throughout this issue, you could see the history of where we've gone with it. So like I said,
I found the PR that I have in my notes, which was trying to touch the exec and touch. I wonder if that's linked in the original. Oh yeah, it is. So that's good. And that's not all that's from a year ago.
yeah, I know, and I also heard that Chow had started working on this, but I think that also fell by the wayside. So I'm gonna try to get this pushed over the finish line, and was hoping to bring this to your guys' attention and to benefit from, because I think that there's been dozens of people who've been involved in this, and I'd like to kind of corral it and get it over the finish line. Okay.
The last comment on that PR says there's a, like at the very end, right before it closes, it says it is clear that this change will require KEP to move forward. Is that still the thinking?
That'll be part of what I'm going to dig into, but I'll report back to the SIG on where we are on that. So yeah, if that's the case, then it won't get into 128, because yeah, probably not going to have a KEP within the next day.
Yeah, that would be challenging. Yeah.
Were there any PRs merged in? I saw that somebody mentioned that they were trying to implement this using Gorilla's WebSocket library, and
that was Borstein who mentioned that, and that actually did sound like the correct path. Again,
well,
yeah, you disagree?
Gorilla's it's archived.
Okay, so that might have been a while ago.
Yeah,
let me
Gorilla
put that.
archived their entire like HTTP associated libraries last year at some point, which is very unfortunate because they're really nice and easy to work with. But yeah.
Okay, I'll put that as a note. Yeah, I think that there's just, it's a sprawling, if you start digging into these issues, you'll end up with, 100 tabs in your browser. So I think a big part of the effort is going to be just to kind of corral it all, organize it all, and see what gaps need to be filled in order to get it across the finish line.
I got another PR on the same topic from my notes. It's also linked in the original PR, but yeah, so there has been multiple approaches.
Let me add some.
I'm fully supportive of the approach in general, trying to push this forward.
Cool, excellent. can we move to Arda's issue? Okay, so let me share this particular tab. Arda, would you like to speak about improvements around kube control delete minus all?
Yes, sure. That's an interesting case because simple mistyping caused a trouble in cluster. A user wanted to delete PVCs in one namespace, but he or she wrote persistent volume, and kube control discards the namespace and delete all the persistent volumes in the cluster. I think we can I think we can add some kind of validation or even block deleting cluster-wide resources if the namespace is explicitly set. That's why I wanted to bring that topic because of backwards compatible issues. I don't know. I wonder your opinions about it.
Isn't this the same issue that inspired the kuberc kept ultimately, because it kept coming up and we decided we couldn't do it because it was breaking?
Yeah, I'm just trying to find the original discussion that Eddie kicked off some time ago. Okay, I have the link. So Eddie had an entire conversation about the topic almost 2 years ago. It's like May 2021. There has been multiple arguments in both directions about the flow, how, when, should we change it. The general outcome is that cluster admins are free to add validating webhooks if they wish to prevent accidental delays, which would work whatever process that they want to have around the confirmation. Most likely kubectl will not be changed due to backwards compatibility, but that's where we came up with the kuberc such that users are able to change the defaults for certain flags. And another one was the introduction of the interactive mode for delete. Not sure if the interaction was ever implemented in delete, but the interactive option in combination with kuberc, where you would set explicitly the default to always be on, at least for some users, this could give you that kind of guarantees. But in general, we're not planning to fix it differently.
In terms of interactivity, I understand we can use kuberc, but the command is wrong. We are trying to delete PV by also allowing setting namespace. I think we should just prevent this. If this is a cluster-wide resource and namespace is passed, we should block that.
Yes and no, because you can always pass both. The biggest issue is the passing of all. If the author would not pass with --all, the original issue would not happen in the first place. In parallel to that, you can always pass a mix of cluster and namespace scope resources, in which case you do expect that it will work just fine and figure out which you care about and correctly identify the cluster scope and the namespace scope and apply the provided namespace to the ones that you have. And unfortunately, by the fact that delete is one of the commands that has been out there the longest, the backwards compatibility and the potential fallout of changing the default is bigger than the cost, especially if we look through over the past 10, well, 10, maybe I'm over, a little bit over, but I would say 5-6 years. I would say we had like 4 or 5 issues. Eddie addressed an issue a while back. That's what triggered his email thread. I was trying to approach a similar problem even earlier. I think it's also mentioned in that email thread. You're just bumping into something similar, and for now, we're pointing people to the Kubernetes effort that should allow to prevent them from similar cases. And other than that, there are options how you can prevent from those kind of situations on the cluster level.
Okay, thanks. Probably the missing thing for me is I thought you can only pass PV or PVC, but if it accepts multiple resources one time, yeah, it makes sense now.
So a couple quick questions. Should we say triage accepted on this issue? Does that sound reasonable?
I would probably try to find the other issue.
The original one?
Either the one from Eddie. I think he has a couple of issues. 1056, he's pointing at 1056. So maybe just not sure what happened with the 1056. Let me open it up. That got closed. Yeah, we closed it as a with the entire explanation. So I would just link Eddie's comment from 1056, specifically this comment, and close the issue.
Okay, so we have a conclusion on where we want to go with this. Sounds like.
And one more thing on this, like another thing, the way to look at it maybe is that the all flag is a problem. Is that, I mean, instead of like giving people a way to not accidentally delete everything, it seems like even the existence of the all flag is not even a thing that we should have.
Good question.
That was probably a good question. But I'm guessing you already know the answer that we can't change it at this point in time. I know why it, if I remember correctly, why all was added. It was added for convenience. Unfortunately, as with every convenience tool, it has an equally high probability to hurt yourself as much as help you. So that's the problem. But yeah, interactive would be basically the simplest, most straightforward way to fix it. If anyone is interested in adding interactive to delete, if it's not there yet, I'm happy to review that kind of a PR and then help with the Kubernetes work to be the next step.
Thanks.
So Arda, do you think that you have everything you need on this?
Yes, thank you. I understand user point of view. If you create a temporary namespace and you just want to delete all of it, all of the resource in it, you can use --all. But yeah, I understand the problem here. Thank you.
Okay. if we've completed that one, I'm going to move on to the server-side apply as default and share that tab. There's a brand new KEP. Would Mache or maybe even Antoine like to talk about this server-side apply
Yeah,
as default?
if Antoine is on the line, I'll probably pass it on over to him because he authored the KEP. I stumbled upon it literally yesterday or the day before yesterday, and I'm open. There will be a discussion about the topic a little bit later today during the PRR review. John had some concerns about changing the default, and we need to figure out how to approach the topic. I'm not sure if Antoine is planning to target 127 with this.
I don't know. I mean, the consensus is that the timeline is not in our favor. We don't have a lot of time to discuss that, so I'm open to postpone that until the next release. If there's anything we can do this release to prepare, though, I think would be a good idea. It's been delayed a long time already, so if we can move with that, I'd be happy.
I'm pretty sure that whatever the outcome of today's discussion will be, we can actually, within 127, start adding some warnings around the usage of those flags to prepare the users that in the next version we will be doing whatever change we will decide to do. Having that extra time would be definitely beneficial for the users. Oh, so Antoine, do you want to quickly discuss the idea behind the KEP, just to make sure everyone are on the same page?
Sorry, I had to find a different room. What did you say, Matcha?
Can you quickly describe the idea behind the KEP so that everyone in the room are on the same page?
Okay, so the idea we had with this KEP specifically was we had many discussions, so I can't even remember what I proposed in the KEP. But I think we wanted to switch the default of server-side apply to being auto, and auto being a new flag. The flag meant if you have some resources you've client-side applied in the past, we're going to continue client-side applying these resources. But new resources are going to be server-side applied, and already server-side applied resources are going to continue being server-side applied. One problem we can have today is that if you have some resources that are client-side applied and some that are server-side applied, it's pretty hard to, you have to only apply the one you want with the right flag and then another set with a different flag, which can be confusing. And we've seen people go back and forth between client-side and server-side by accident because they don't specify the right value. And we are doing our best to get a good migration from one to the other, but it's not completely perfect. So we'd like to avoid people going from client-side to server-side to client-side constantly by accident. So auto-detecting was an idea to help people, to prevent people from doing the wrong thing. We were arguing on what do we do with new resources. We could continue to client-side apply them, or we could server-side apply them, which would go toward the goal of like having only server-side apply eventually. But that's going to break a lot of workflows for people, I think, mostly because of conflicts. And I don't think CI/CD systems are necessarily ready for conflicts. We also discussed with Katrina the idea of like forcing conflicts by default, which would basically it would migrate people to server-side apply, but most people would not realize. I would say the vast majority of people would not realize. So that would allow us to migrate people to server-side apply without them noticing, which is good. The problem is we lose a lot of the value of conflicts. And it sounds hard to switch back the value of false conflicts later. So we quite don't know what to do, to be honest. The proposal was one of these ideas, but we have multiple ideas and we're still trying to weigh the trade-offs, I think. And we don't have time.
Yeah, I've been discussing this with Antoine and Alex in Slack a bunch and throwing ideas around because we have these goals, but we wanted to make it not disruptive for users and make them benefit from the value. And there's a lot of trade-offs there, so it's tough.
I'm personally supportive of the change. My only objections about the silence, which was the one that I voiced in the CAP, where because you rely on the fact that if something exists, then you use server side, you use client side, and it has an annotation, you use client side. If it's something new and it doesn't exist on the cluster, then you switch automatically to server side. My main objection is that if we have a one directory or one invocation of Kubernetes apply, you might end up with old resources applied with client side and new resources applied with the server side. That's something that I would like to prevent. Other than that, I think the rest is reasonable, and although maybe I would put some kind of information that, oh yeah, we actually picked the server side just so that you are aware that this is what you should be doing in case you figure out that you don't want to.
How do you feel about CI/CD systems that are going to break if we server-side apply some resources by surprise?
That's one of the use cases if we start doing half on server side and half on the client side. Everything else should be just fine. If it's like brand new, you should be fine using the new approach.
Are you saying if we had server-side apply equals true, meaning we have no mixed objects, you'd be fine with that because that's still going to break systems. Though the system is easy to fix, you just add -- server-side equal false. If it's a system, it's fairly easy to update, I think. It's gonna break.
In case you have a mix, I'm not 100% sure what would be the best approach.
Yeah.
A mixed case and the ability to prevent the mixed case is something that I would be.
Yes, I don't think we have a lot of mixes today because it's hard to have mixes anyway. I don't know if you have an opinion about that, Katrina. I'm with Alex, by the way.
I don't have an opinion about how common it is. I have no idea, to be honest. But I guess I want to dig into like why that's bad. Like apply is on a per object basis. So I get it can be confusing if the default, like if the auto mode does client side on the one hand and then server side with forced conflicts disabled on the other, then you're going to get very different behaviors there because client side behaves as though it forces conflicts. So that would be like, what the heck is going on?
Okay.
But if the combo were instead like auto mode means client side for existing and server side with conflicts forced, which is very similar behavior, just like upgraded, so to speak, to server side apply, what would the risks to the end users be if that's what auto mode meant?
But so do you want the value of force conflict to change based on the value of server side? Is that what you're saying? Or?
I guess that's what it comes down to. I'm more thinking from a behavioral perspective. Like if I'm an end user, what do I expect? And how do I get consistent behavior here? Like the consistent flow behavior, like, because if I'm thinking about like the average user, they have no idea what server side client side means, right? And
Yeah.
to them, like the meaningful difference is that difference in conflict handling. So the transparent upgrade path becomes to opt them into forced conflict server side apply. So that's sort of my train of thought. Like that's what we could do automatically. So auto mode could potentially do that, which, yes, you're right, in practice means toggling a flag value based on another flag value, which maybe is not ideal. Arguably that already happens because force conflicts behaviorally, you know, like what does that sound like to the user? For server side apply, it's defaulted on, right? Or sorry, defaulted off. Polarity confuses me when I'm talking about this. I've defaulted off. Whereas for client side apply, behaviorally, it's defaulted on.
Yes. Yes, I think for people who have no idea what's going on, you're right. The default is actually not the same. But as soon as you've started using the server side of life flag, sorry, then it's very weird.
Right. So I'm saying, like, if the auto mode is sort of behaving like the client side mode of that server side flag, then it's actually not any weirder than what we're already doing.
If we accept that, yeah, I can see that. I don't know if it's going to solve the problem though. In 6 months, 8 months, a year from now, we'll be like, how do we get from auto to something else? And we'll have the same discussion again, and that's gonna make me sad.
Yeah, I think auto is just one facet of the plan. That other conversation we're having about, like, what is the actual transition off these flags is important to have, and we don't have like a solid plan for what that can look like and be non-disruptive. But auto would be like a tool to help people actually do this and not be disrupted in the process.
What if we actually gave people 8 months and be disruptive? What if we told them we set a warning somewhere for 8 months, and in 8 months we flip the server side flag, and people will get conflicts. They'll be mad a little. If they have tools, they can update it in the 8 months. If they haven't, they can update it instantly. It's not like the migration is actually expensive, right? By then we might have the kuberc file.
I think the kuberc is not as helpful because, like, from a safety angle, what matters is what we're talking about in auto mode, that like a given object gets a consistent strategy, so you don't flip back and forth. And kuberc is a user preference, so it's a per individual, per actor preference, which is probably not the level you want it on. But yeah, I mean, we do have to do a lot of warning. The timeline is super long because we're talking about GA flags. So like, what is that, like 1.5 years or something? I'm just trying to think of, like, we want to give, if we're going to tell users that they have to do something, we want to give them the tools to be able to do it as safely and disruption free as possible.
So yeah, we basically, what you're saying is we have 1.5 years to make sure the migration is working perfectly, but all they have to do is just switch the flag. If they want to keep the old way, right? Or they integrate whatever they have to integrate, their server side thing. If they apply manually, it's probably better anyway. If they apply with an automation system, they can either specify the flag and keep the old thing, or they have 1.5 years to update the CI/CD system.
Yeah, and it's so disruptive that I think we need to find some way that, like, they could not possibly miss the whatever it is, the warning.
I agree with you. They're gonna miss it 100%. But then, what the problem is? What do they have to do when they realize they messed it up? If it's like, oh, you have to rewrite all your controllers and it's going to take months, then that's definitely problematic. If it's like, oh, you have to change this one script to change this one flag, I could live with that.
I guess there's also a question of, like, what is our level of confidence in, say we flip from client side by default to server side by default with conflicts enabled. You could say, like, okay, on the one hand, maybe the only thing they need to do is add force conflicts equals true. If they had a problem with this, they didn't notice, then it auto upgraded and they had the errors, yada, yada, they add that flag. But how confident are we in just that transition itself? Like you said, we fixed a bug in it last release. it's not perfect. Do we actually, like the secondary question is, do we actually need something like auto mode, because that provides sort of an extra safety layer for people who are doing this transition, because it makes them never actually transition any single object from one to the other.
Yeah, that's gonna create a lot of, I can see that. So I don't know. Do you have an opinion, Alex?
It sounds like, I guess I didn't understand the question. It sounds like we don't trust server-side apply.
The transition, do we not trust server-side apply or the migration code from client-side to server-side apply? Or both, you can say both.
Oh, the question was, how much do we trust the migration, and how much are we going to expect our users to trust the migration? Like if we're not confident in saying this is perfect, it doesn't go wrong, then something like auto mode sounds like super useful to the end user, because then we don't actually force anybody down that path, even when we flip the default.
Using force conflicts, I think, is pretty certain way for a migration. Like,
yeah, but people are gonna have some client-side applied object. If we flip the switch to server-side, then we're gonna have to migrate everyone's objects, all the objects,
right,
at the time they do server-side apply the first time. So when they update kubectl, so we need to make sure we don't mess up their config at that time. I guess that's your point, Katrina.
Yes, and
I don't know if auto
that
helps.
like auto mode could be a mitigation for that. If we have a default auto mode in the middle for like a long period, then maybe we eliminate one of the failure modes that users could potentially encounter, which is transitioning a single object from one strategy to the other.
Yeah, I like the idea of switching server-side apply on in the near term, but having force conflicts be on in the auto mode she's talking about. But then in the future, like we're warning everyone, we're going to turn force conflicts off eventually. So we have all that time, a year, to transition people onto server-side apply. And then at the end of it, it's just as easy as turning force conflicts off.
So what does this look like? It looks like, sure, go ahead, Mathieu.
So maybe we could literally use 127 to start putting the warning already that, oh, you're using server side, you're using apply. We are going to change it. You should already start explicitly setting the flag to true or false, such that users will be prepared to use one or the other before we even start making the switch in the next release. And I'm positive that there will be a multitude of users who will not pick one or the other and will go with the migration, but at least we can prepare them ahead of time and make a noise about it, because like that's literally what we can do, not to break them.
I don't know if we know what auto mode means right now. Sorry, Katrina. I don't know if we know what auto means right now. Does it mean we keep client-side apply as it is, and we server-side apply server-side resources, and we do something about new resources? We could first do auto apply the existing resources, continue to create with client-side, have a warning to say we start server-side applying new resources soon. Then start doing that with the force conflict maybe in the auto mode, and then stop doing force conflict at one point or another, and then server-side apply everything. How does that sound? Trying to ease the transition. I feel like we're cutting that's maybe a French saying, I don't know how appropriate it is, forget it. But I feel like it's gonna be a lot of pain points. Every 4 months, people are gonna have a little bit of pain, as opposed to having a lot of pain at one point, but then forget about it.
People will forget about it at whatever we do. Doesn't matter how long we will extend it. There will be people who will come up their ass and they will be complaining. But I'm very supportive of that kind of approach, where we would gradually switch from one to the other over few releases.
So what do we say? I switch the cap to, I keep the auto mode. We keep it the way it is for existing resources, as in currently client-side applied resources are continuing to be client-side, server-side applied resources continue to be server-side, new resources are client-side in the first place, maybe with a warning. And we see what Mathieu, your face looks like you don't like it.
So for I'm still leaning towards that. I might be wrong, but I'm still leaning towards the approach where if you're processing entire directory and nothing was touched on this directory before with apply, I would automatically switch to server-side apply because that's literally a new package.
Ooh, I see
And
what
in
you're
the cases where this is like package that has been already applied and it's already been applied with a client-side apply, where you would end in a weird mixed state where half is server-side apply and half is client-side apply. That's probably something that I would prefer to avoid.
Okay, so when you're saying directory, can we say it's the set of resources being applied? And so basically, if any of the resources in the set that you're applying has ever been client-side applied, then new resources are client-side applied.
Yes.
What if you have a mix?
I would warn and I don't know. That's probably the point where I would start complaining that, oh, you're using both and we will break you soon.
Okay, so
Why is both so bad though? I just want to dig into that. Like why are we afraid of that situation? Like the apply set is kind of arbitrary in most cases. Unless you have pruning enable, you can apply random sets and have like the kubectl, generally speaking, doesn't have, and the cluster certainly has no concept of sets across these objects. So why do we actually care about creating that scenario?
I'm being paranoid as usual. I don't have any strong arguments and I can easily be persuaded otherwise. I'm just trying to come up with the worst possible scenarios that could happen with that. If you, Katrina, and Antoine can tell me that I'm wrong and I'm making this up, I'll be fine with the.
I mean, I agree with Katrina. It's very concerning if you start doing, say, oh, I'm just applying this one resource I know I just changed. You're gonna mess up the entire thing. And
yeah, I'm worried we're going to make people care about the wrong thing. Like that, if we don't make the right plan here, we're going to cause a lot of confusion. Like we need to be clear on what's actually dangerous to the users and what we need them to pay attention to because they have limited attention to give us. And like, for example, if we can make them not care about the client-side, server-side distinction and only care about like what to them is a feature in this migration, so that they're not like, what even client-side, server-side, what, like if we can frame the changes that they need to make in terms of things that are going to like individually make sense to them, I think that will be better for the UX.
I can totally see the bug we would have if this guy is like, oh, I'm trying to apply this resource and I get this behavior, and when I apply these two resources, I have a different behavior, and we'd be like, yeah, we created this for ourselves.
Yeah, so like I think it makes more sense to think about them on an individual level than as a set, because the sets aren't a real thing.
And it seems like one of the biggest problems is going to be, okay, we move somebody to server side and they may or may not need forced conflicts, right? So that's going to, so like it could be that this is completely, you know, the one case where people are going to trip up, you know, for sure is we moved them to server side and oh no, now they have conflicts over some of the fields and something just started failing, which sounds like the CI/CD case, especially if we focus in on that case, that very, very common pain case, that might help us move forward. What do you think? What does everybody think?
Yeah, I think the force concept, forced conflicts issue is kind of the crux of the problem. I agree, like because of the CI/CD disruption, like tons of people use this in that context, and we're always telling people to also, so we don't want to make their lives hard when they do what we tell them to. And one idea that I had around this is that like that forced conflicts flag, if we're hesitant to do a migration where we just turn on server-side apply with conflicts forced by default because we didn't want them to miss out on that functionality, then maybe that's where we should force the user's attention, is in making that choice, like make that flag required or some equivalent flag required, so that they have to say, no, I actually didn't want conflict detection. Thank you very much. Like, because that's a meaningful choice for them. Do I want conflicts enabled or not? And if I'm in a CI/CD system, maybe I don't want to detect conflicts. If I'm outside it, I do. And they don't really care if the operation happens server side or client side, but they do care about that distinction, and we want them to care about it. So maybe that's what we look at.
So what do we do now? Should we do auto and new resources are server-side apply with spouse conflict?
That's what's making sense to me, but I'm like really nervous about like tomorrow's the last day to get an enhancement in, and this has to make sense as part of the plan. I don't know.
It's gonna be fine.
I would try.
Go ahead.
I would use 127 to figure out the details and write it down. If something pops up, we will have enough time to address the issues accordingly, and put warnings already in 127 in the code in place. Maybe ideally put out there a blog post explaining and preparing users for the switch, and the warning could actually point to that blog post already, and then I don't know, something like that, and then actually start with the changes in 128.
One concern I have about that is that I think it's not even clear what the transition will look like for users right now, so we don't know what to warn them about.
We haven't built good freeze to write the warning.
That's why we have the entire 127 to figure the transition steps.
But transition to what? Like, we can't warn them what they're going to have to do without knowing what they're going to have to do.
No.
Something's gonna happen, guys. Be careful.
Look out, we will feel warned. And remember that whenever you're touching this, you'll have to do something, but we still don't know what you have to do. But you feel you should be warned. And the adventure will unfold.
One suggestion, maybe, that we could get something into 127. This auto value for the flag. Maybe we're like pretty close to thinking that we have some idea of what that should look like. That could be hidden behind an alpha flag. We could have like, if you have some alpha flag enabled, that's our common pattern, right? Then there's an auto value for that flag, and people could actually try it. And then if during this like bigger process discussion, we're like, actually, we don't want that to be part of the plan, we're free to remove it. 128. What do you think?
Yeah, we'll have one John Doe try it. That's gonna be good.
Well, better than zero.
Yeah.
We can do the blog post thing as well, like Macho was saying. If we have that as an anchor, we can be like, we're trying to figure out how this works. We made this auto mode thing, put this flag on, try it out, tell us why it's a terrible idea. And here's our big plan. Please comment on our cap. It's like kind of an anchor.
Yeah,
Let's not
that
expect
would be
people to
good.
do that to have server-side apply enabled in the first place. Like if people are trying alpha things, they've probably already tried server-side apply, I would hope. We don't know for sure. Yeah, we can try. It's valid for you to experiment with that, I agree.
Yeah, if I'm not set on it or anything, it just occurred to me as something that we could potentially get done, with the tiny timeline that we have left to propose something.
Yeah. Okay, that's good. I think we should continue this discussion offline, sorry.
So to the notes, I've added a little bit more context for those who aren't deep in the weeds on this. Daniel Smith has a blog on the Kubernetes, Kubernetes blog post about why server-side's important. And as more context, just so everybody knows, the Kubernetes community has put a significant amount of investment into server-side apply. And until we actually make it default, we're not going to realize that investment. So that's why we think this is important. And if you'd like to know more, please go ahead and read that blog post, Daniel's blog post.
Thank you, Sean.
Okay, it looks like we've filled up our entire hour. I didn't think we were going to at the beginning, but we have. Is there anybody else before we stop recording and before we log off? Is there anything else that anybody would like to address in 1 minute? Okay, well, I appreciate all of your time, and I look forward to seeing you all in 2 weeks. Thank you.